I had always thought of our building as a place of pride. 9 full stories, a clean facade, modern lifts, a view of the skyline was something we owned, something solid and secure. Families rented the other apartments, children played in the courtyard, and at first glance, it seemed like any other high-rise. But over time, a different reputation began to grow. Tenants whispered about odd happenings. At night, when someone went to the washroom, the mirrors would feel wrong. Their own reflection would seem slightly off, the smile too wide, the eyes too deep, the face somehow not entirely theirs. Occasionally, they claimed, another figure could be seen standing behind them in the glass, just out of focus. Others spoke of the stairway, climbing up late at night. They would hear faint footsteps following them, soft, but perfectly in time with their own. Yet when they turned around, the stairs were empty. The lift, too, had its stories. It would sometimes shut off in the middle of a ride, the lights flickering out, the cabin shuddering as though something else had entered. Those trapped inside swore they could feel a presence breathing in the darkness. My wife and I, like everyone else, brushed these tales aside. Imagination, we'd say. Stress, overwork, poor sleep. No one wanted to believe a building could be haunted, least of all the people who lived in it. After all, who would willingly stay in a haunted place? Better to laugh it off and keep living. But even as I dismissed the stories, I couldn't ignore the feeling that the building itself held its breath at night, waiting, listening. It was a silence that seemed heavier than ordinary silence, as though we were being watched from somewhere just out of sight. It was a weekend like any other when my wife's family came over. The apartment felt lively, shoes piled near the entrance, the kitchen filled with voices and clinking dishes. Among the visitors was a little girl I didn't recognize. She was perhaps 6 or 7 years old, with soft hair that fell over her face, and large, quiet eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the room. She stayed close to my son at first, watching him with an unreadable expression. Soon, they were playing together on the carpet, rolling toy cars back and forth. I smiled at the sight. Children always found ways to bond, even without words. After a while, the girl came up to me. She stood very still, her head tilted slightly, and in a small, clear voice asked for food. I gave her some without hesitation, rice and a little curry, and she accepted it without a smile, without a thank you, as though the act was expected. Something about her stillness unsettled me, but I brushed it off. Maybe she was just shy. Later, when things calmed down, I asked my wife, "Who's the little girl? She's been playing with our son all afternoon." My wife looked up from what she was doing. "What little girl?" "The one who came with your family," I said, frowning. "She's right there, she just asked me for food." My wife shook her head slowly. "No child came with us. Everyone who's here is in this room." I felt a chill run down my back. At first, I thought she was teasing me, but when I went to look, the girl was gone. The toys lay scattered where the 2 children had been playing, but my son was alone now, quietly building a tower of blocks. "Where's the girl you were playing with?" I asked him. He looked up, confused. "What girl?" "I was playing by myself." I stood in the doorway of the living room, staring at the empty space where she had been, trying to reason with myself. Maybe she'd slipped out to another room. Maybe one of the relatives had taken her downstairs. But no matter how much I searched the apartment, every room, every corner, there was no sign of her. I returned to the dining room and sat down, my palms cold. My wife was still busy with her family, unaware of my unease. In the background, the sound of chatter and cooking went on as though nothing had happened. But I couldn't shake the image of the little girl's face, the way she'd asked for food, the way she'd played with my son. It had all felt so real. And that was the moment when the building stories stopped being just stories for me. That night, long after my wife's family had left, the apartment felt strangely quiet. The kind of silence that isn't just absence of sound, but a thickness in the air, like the pause before a storm. I tried to sleep, but my mind kept circling back to the little girl, her expression, her voice, the way she had simply vanished. Sometime after midnight, I woke up, unsure why. Our bedroom door opened onto the hallway, which in turn overlooked the dining room below through a wide arch. In the dim glow of the nightlight, I saw something move. At first, I thought it was my imagination, a trick of shadow and sleeplessness. But when I blinked, it was still there. It was her. The little girl stood in the dining room, but not exactly standing. Her bare feet hovered an inch or two above the tiled floor, toes pointed downward, hair hanging in front of her face. She was utterly still, except for the slow tilt of her head, as though she were listening for something I couldn't hear. I sat up, heart hammering, trying to convince myself it was a dream. But dreams don't make your palms sweat. Dreams don't fill your nostrils with the faint smell of damp earth and old wood. She moved, then not walking but gliding across the room, her feet never touching the floor, her head turned upward, and even from where I sat, I could feel her eyes find me through the darkness. Two deep, black pools. I tried to speak, but my throat closed. My body felt heavy, like lead, as though something was pressing me down into the mattress. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. She reached the mirror at the far end of the dining room and placed her hands flat against it. Her reflection stared back, but it was wrong. Her mouth slightly open, her eyes far too wide. It looked as if she were trying to push through the glass. Then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. The room was empty again, the nightlight flickering slightly. My heart was still pounding in my ears. After that, I saw her more and more, not just once, but night after night, always in the same place, always at the edge of the dining room. Sometimes she hovered near the hallway, sometimes near the mirror, her pale hands leaving faint, damp marks that were gone by morning. I stopped telling myself it was sleep paralysis. This was something else, something alive, or once alive, that had found its way into our home. And each time her gaze rose to meet mine, I felt it a kind of warning, a silent message. She was watching my family. She was waiting. By the time the rooftop incident happened, my nerves were frayed. Nights of seeing her had left me hollow-eyed and restless. I tried to act normal around my family, but every time my son laughed or played, I caught myself glancing over his shoulder, searching for a glimpse of her. One afternoon, the air inside the apartment felt heavy, almost electric. My son begged me to take him up to the rooftop to look at the sky. I hesitated. The rooftop was usually his favorite place. A stretch of concrete lined with potted plants, a low parapet wall around the edge. But now, the thought of open space above the city made me uneasy. Still, I forced a smile and agreed. He was too young to understand the kind of fear I carried. The sun was bright, but the wind was strange, sharp, cool, carrying a smell of rain though the sky was clear. My son ran ahead, darting toward the far edge where he liked to lean over and look down at the traffic. I knelt by my plants, checking the soil, trying to steady my heartbeat. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Then I sensed it, that same presence, that same shift in the air. I looked up. She was there. The little girl was standing behind my son, only an arm's length away from the edge. But she wasn't just standing. Her body leaned forward, her hands outstretched, fingers splayed like claws reaching to shove. Her face had changed, the blankness replaced with something twisted, a cruel smile that didn't belong to a child at all. Time slowed, my voice caught in my throat. I scrambled to my feet and ran, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Move away," I shouted, but the wind swallowed my words. She moved closer to him, her hands nearly touching his back. My son turned, confused by my yell, but he didn't see her. He only saw me, sprinting toward him like a madman. I lunged, grabbed his arm, and yanked him back just as she thrust her hands forward. Instead of hitting him, her fingers passed through empty air. Her eyes widened, a flash of rage, or perhaps pain, and then she dissolved like smoke into nothing, leaving only a trace of cold wind and the sound of my own ragged breathing. My son clung to me, frightened by my reaction, but unaware of what had just happened. I held him tight, staring at the spot where she had been. The low wall, the open sky, the city far below. She was gone, but the intent had been clear. She had wanted to push him, to take him. That was the moment my fear turned into resolve. It wasn't enough to ignore her anymore. She wasn't going to stop. I knew that I had to act, to do something to drive her out before she tried again. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her pale, outstretched hands behind my son. The memory of her twisted smile burned in my mind. The apartment felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I realized we were no longer living in our own home. We were living inside hers. I waited until dawn, then began making calls. Friends, acquaintances, anyone who might know a spiritual healer. Eventually, someone gave me a name. A quiet man who had performed blessings and exorcisms before. Someone who didn't advertise but was spoken of in whispers. I called him, my voice shaking. He agreed to come that evening. When he arrived, he didn't look like the dramatic figures from movies. He was small, gray-haired, with calm eyes. He stepped inside, shut the door, and stood silently for a long moment as if listening. Then he nodded to himself and said softly, "She's here." He asked us not to speak. He walked through every room with slow, deliberate steps, murmuring words I didn't recognize. In one hand, he held a worn book, its pages lined with ink so faded it looked like smoke. In the other, a pouch of ashes. He sprinkled them in the corners, on the thresholds, leaving faint gray trails. When he entered the dining room, he stopped dead. His eyes lifted to the mirror at the far end. The same mirror where I had seen her pressing her hands night after night. "This is where she enters," he said. His voice was quiet but firm. "This is her doorway." He set a small brass bowl on the floor, poured something dark into it, and lit it. Smoke rose, curling against the ceiling, thick and acrid. He began to recite in a low, steady chant, each word sharp and deliberate. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, as if the apartment itself were resisting. I held my son close. He was trembling now, eyes darting to the corners where the shadows moved just a little too much. My wife stood behind me, clutching my arm. Then the man's chant grew louder. The smoke turned from gray to black, swirling like a storm. A faint sound like a child's voice came from the mirror. A high, thin wail that rose and broke. The mirror vibrated, the surface rippling like water. For a moment, I saw her face there, pressed against the glass, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. The man slammed his hand against the mirror, leaving a mark of ash. He spoke a final word, louder than the rest. The air cracked, a sound like stone splitting, and then, suddenly, silence. The smoke thinned, the temperature lifted. The man lowered his hands, breathing hard. "It's done," he said quietly. "She's gone." For the first time in weeks, the apartment felt empty. Not heavy, not watchful, just empty. Room after a storm has passed. That night, when I went to the bathroom, the mirror showed only my own tired face. The lift worked. The stairs were silent. My son slept soundly. Yet even now, months later, sometimes when I pass the dark dining room at night, I pause. I stare at the mirror, half expecting to see two small hands pressed against the glass. And I wonder if she's truly gone or only waiting, somewhere just beyond the edge of sight, patient for another chance. Did you enjoy the story? Let us know in the comments. And if you liked it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Horror Dream. Want more stories like this? Subscribe to The Horror Dream, and we'll bring you more darkness, just for you. If you enjoy a little chill down your spine, stick around, like, share, and hit that subscribe button, right here on The Horror Dream. Your support keeps us going, so stay with us. Subscribe to The Horror Dream for more spine-tingling tales.